And then Vicky Hayes asked me should we tell her about the creepy clown guy that stalked us last night and rung Kate's doorbell nearly all night until you shut it off, and then I said tell her if you want to, but it's not worth mentioning because that guy won't be bothering you two again anytime soon because I scared him pretty good last night and I don't think he's coming back to bother us again anytime soon. And I smirked because I knew that Art was now headed to another town where he would meet a very special young girl with a very special sword, and I smiled warmly and I said see you later Art. And then after I spoke with Tara Hayes a bit longer she said please come back here to visit me anytime you want. I get lonely here all alone in our parents' old house. And then I said we will, I promise. And I smiled warmly at Tara Hayes and she blushed, and Vicky Hayes and Dawn told her all about Art the clown, the creepy guy that stalked them all night, and they also said that's the reason why Mike here had to manually shut off the doorbell so he couldn't bother us anymore. And then Tara Hayes got a bit worried and I pulled out my big gun and I said don't worry about anything because I scared him off with this. And then Tara Hayes said that's a really big gun, and then I said yes, one shot from this, and that creepy clown dude was terrified. And I fed her this bit of a half-truth because I didn't want her to worry about anything because eventually me and Kate Beckinsale would have to get rid of Art the clown for good. And after I spoke with Vicky's sister Tara Hayes we all went back home where I saw Kate Beckinsale was laying down on the couch crying, and then when I walked back in the door with 3 more women she didn't care, she just ran up to me and kissed me passionately and she said I'm so sorry, please forgive me for everything, I'm so sorry. And then I put my fingers under her chin and I lifted her head up and then I said don't worry, everything will be fine, but I will need to talk to you about Art later. And then I kissed her passionately and I said we will talk soon after we all get married, and she smiled warmly and excitedly. And then I said I already knew everything even before you and I had sex Kate, but I still love you despite everything, I just want you to know that. And then Dawn said wow, I feel like I'm in a movie or one of those romantic soap operas on TV that I used to watch with my grandma and mother. And then Vicky Hayes and Tara Hayes said we both feel the same, actually I feel like we are all watching a movie unfold because I just can't believe we are all meeting Kate Beckinsale for the first time. And then Kate Beckinsale looked around at all the other beautiful women and she said oh hi, it's nice to meet you all, and I just want you all to know that I am not the jealous type, I am just very happy to be with such a good man and I absolutely adore and love Mikey, he's good to me. And then I showed Kate my gun and I said I scared Art away with this, and then I scowled a bit angry at Kate Beckinsale and I let my eyes glowed for a bit and then I mumbled quietly and I said really Kate, and then she muttered I'm sorry. And then I said now girls, if you don't mind I need to talk with Kate Beckinsale in private because I have something very personal to talk with her about right now. And then I went inside my soundproof room that I also designed like a bunker, and then meanwhile in my kitchen all the women started talking, and then Vicky Hayes asked Dawn what do you think they are talking about in there, and then Dawn said I don't know, maybe they are both talking about whatever upset Mike earlier. And then Vicky asked her do you think are going to have sex in there, and then Dawn said oh definitely. And then Vicky Hayes looked disheartened and a bit jealous, and then Dawn said oh come on Vicky, don't be like that, I mean it's not like we asked the poor guy if he was single while we screwed the crap out of him last night and he stayed up all night. By the way, why isn't he tired or sore? That poor guy must be dead tired, or he's so used to having sex by now that having sex with women for many hours no longer bothers him. And then Dawn smiled warmly, but she also looked worried about me and she said I hope he gets plenty of sleep soon. And then Dawn said it's not a big deal Vicky, if he has sex with her it's because he loves her, but he loves us too, I mean I felt it last night, didn't you? And then Vicky Hayes said yes, I can't deny it, I felt something too, and I have never felt any man love me that great in a long time. And then Dawn said I know, I saw you last night having sex with him again, you little slut, you did him in every sexual position so hard you could barely catch your breath, you were moaning so hard you nearly screamed and you could breathe. And then Dawn said you loved it, and then Vicky Hayes said of course I did, what's not to love about that man, he's perfect and his body is perfect, even his semen tasted good.